Hello and welcome to the channel. I had wanted to make a special video for you today as I have a very interesting surprise. And this is indeed a surprise for myself, as I was quite amazed to discover a watch which should not exist, yet it does. And that is this watch here. And this watch seems to have been very interestingly crafted in the first part of the 20th century. Now, this watch, it does have a ponçon, a maker's mark. And that maker's mark is an AMC superimposed over each other. And this is the registered patent, and this is, or rather ponçon, and this is from 1911. And this is Ariste Montandon-Calame. And what makes this very special is Ariste Montandon-Calame was indeed not a watchmaker. He was a specialist in enamel dials, dial fabricator, and indeed photographic processes for dials. He was indeed in Switzerland one of the pioneers of this photographic technique for watch dials, as they moved from the old painted dials into this chemical process, this collodion, and they were able to basically decorate the dials, put the dial face on with a photochemical process, but they could also make pictures on these dials. So this was an evolving art. But so we have Ariste Montandon-Calame. We know that he was born in 1851, and we find him throughout the Davon Almanacs as early as 1871, but during the early mid-1870s, we find him on Grenier, number 15, and this would have been with his allied and immediate family. Now, he was the son of Jules Frederick Montandon, who was indeed one of the key individuals for Montandon-Furs Locle, who was actually recruiting individuals in Neuchâtel City, in Courcelles. So he was apparently, the father was apparently in an administrative function for Montandon-Furs. And Jules probably has watches, timepieces under his name for the Montandon-Furs franchise. This is not exactly clear, or he was fabricating on his own accord for his own profit. Yet we do know that the father has a Montandon-Furs connection. But he had, this Jules Frederick had indeed many children, and indeed there were two different wives, so some of these brothers would later actually go into business together, that they were half-brothers. And of these children, Ariste Montandon is one of the children, and he is a direct brother of Jules Albert, who Albert Montandon and Edouard Montjon were fabricating watches in Chaux-de-Fonds for their company in England called Montjon and Montandon. And we find them throughout the 1880s. But with regards to Ariste, now his brother, it should be mentioned, his brother Alphonse, and this is already a half-brother, but Alphonse Montandon-Bandelier was one of the largest last watch manufacturers in the Montandon name, in the Montandon brand. And he appears to have been functioning at some point in the beginning with his brother Paul Montandon-Nagy. And these two, we find them on Rue de la Serre, I believe it's number 4. But later, Alphonse continues under his own steam, as the brother was probably collaborating with him in various different capacities. But yet, and they would be making many watches. Indeed, it does appear to be that Alphonse is the premier of the watch manufacturers left after the dissolution of Montandon-Furs Locle, and they were based in La Chaux-de-Fonds. But and we do have his ponçon, Alphonse Montandon-Bandelier, the lion. But now with Ariste, We do have his poinçon, which was already established in 1911, but during this period of the 1880s and 1890s, he had been working with a series of his family alliance members, so that he was married with Laure Adèle Calame, and that's why we have him known as Ariste Montandon-Calame. This is the allied family in addition. So, but we do know that Ariste was working with the Calames and also the Nicolet. And this Nicolet and Company, we find many of these associations registered indeed at the same address. For example, Park number 43. So Nicolet, this is Jules Constant Nicolet, and this is Nicolet dit Félix. Now he appears to have been collaborating with Ariste on a series of these different watch fabrication projects, it would seem. So probably it's most likely that Ariste was providing services to him, etc., and it probably worked both ways. But this Nicolet, Jules Nicolet, so he married the sister of Ariste's wife. So he married Louise Calame. Now Ariste's wife was Laure Adèle Calame. So we have these very strong family alliances, and they are working, fabricating these various households, fabricating together on larger projects. And so with this watch, it must be assumed that this comes after the 1911 period when this poinçon was registered, but this, we do not know exactly. This watch fabrication does appear to be probably during circa the 20s or 30s, based on the technical specifications within the watch. Now, Ariste himself died around 1930, and his wife indeed carried on this company of Ariste Montandon-Calame until 1936. Now, she eventually died in 1940. But around Ariste, we have a lot of very interesting things happening. Now, he was a huge specialist in dial fabrication, enamel dial fabrication, and he was indeed called to be a witness with one of his allied members at a trial which was looking at counterfeiting, and this involved, and I can cite this is very interesting. This was, I believe, a J. Wyss, W-Y-S-S, Fils, against, he was claimant in an 1893 court case against a certain César Vuillaumier. And this Vuillaumier appears to have been violating a patent for a certain type of cadran or dial fabrication. And as witnesses, we do find called both Jules, this is Jules Constant Nicolet-Calame, and Ariste Montandon-Calame. So they were already known as experts in dial fabrication, and they testified at the tribunal, and they ruled on the side of Joseph Wyss, and determined that this Vuillaumier should pay the defendant a sum of 800 francs for damages as for this counterfeit, as well as 171,500 francs for the cost of the cantonal tribal. This is very interesting. But again, with Ariste, now him and his wife, they had three children, and one of these became a veterinarian. The other, it is not clear what his profession was. May have been helping in the business, but there is a third child, Ariste Jules. And now, this is a very interesting phenomenon in Swiss families and the naming. For example, oftentimes the child would be named in honor of the father. However, when there are two individuals in the family with the same name, the second name is adopted as what you're using and calling in everyday life. However, your official name still remains, for example, the father. So we find Ariste Jules, the son. He was born in 1879, domiciled in the Bern area, but he also went into watchmaking. And indeed, from 1906 and 1907, we do find a patent at the address, which is the registered business of Ariste Montandon-Calame. And this patent is for a partnership of a Montandon and a Jobin. And the company was called Jobin, Montandon and Company. And this existed between 1904 and 1912, when Aurel Jobin, one of the principals, died. And this was located, that company was registered in Les Bois, but they do have patents. And in the patent itself, and we have the Swiss patent and the British patent for this. This is for improvements or in connection with watches. And this was basically between the case and the dial and the mounting locking system. So the partner listed here is Ulysse Montandon, and at Rue du Nord, number 113, La Chaux-de-Fonds. And this is the very direct address that Ariste Montandon-Calame was using. Therefore, this Ulysse must be Ariste Ulysse Montandon. And now, very interestingly, we do find many patents by this Ulysse Montandon, and indeed, he would later be patenting under the name of not Ulysse, however, Ariste. And this was after the death of his father. Now, his father died around 1930, but so he died. The son died in 1936. But we do see his inventions during this later period where he's already. The son, this is Ariste Ulysse, is patenting under the name of Ariste now, and one of these patents is quite interesting. Actually, relates to recording numbers dialed to telephonic stations. There had been a huge confusion during this time that people would call each other, and then they would be billed erroneously for calls, but they needed a way to record the phone number dialed, how long the phone conversation lasted, etc., so that the billing would be accurate. And one of his patents from this period is exactly on this automatic recording of a dialed number to a telephonic station. So it's interesting that his inventions moved outside of watchmaking itself. But it is, let us move back to the father. This whole watch dynasty is quite interesting because the number of individuals involved in the watchmaking they're so highly concentrated. Indeed, after the demise or disillusionment, dissolving of Montandon First Locle, which had been the flagship Montandon watch fabricator, many of these sons of Jules Frederick, who had been involved in that business, we do find at the tail end of the 1880s. Now, this had dissolved around 1888 when Charles Albert went to the Caribbean. By this time, he had already closed up shop and sold the rights to Montandon Furs to a Christian Boss, I believe. But there had been in Devon Almanac's listings for Montandon Furs in this moving towards 1888, indeed, when Charles Albert was away. And it appears that the sons of Jules Frederick, who had been working in some capacity, probably on various different components in the watches for Montandon Furs, they almost appeared to be posed to be taking up the mantle of this watch fabrication under this name of Montandon Furs. Indeed, they were most likely almost a de facto unit within the company. But after 1888, 1889, we do not see Montandon Furs listed anymore in these Dalmoin almanacs, but all the sons of Jules Frederick are already involved in some form of watch fabrication under different names. So therefore, this is probably an idea that they wanted to combine, but then because this Christian Boss took the rights to this, probably purchased the rights, that they didn't have the legal standing to use this name. However, they did continue in the watchmaking, but it is very interesting, this nexus of these horologists and this very curious watch that we have. Now, this is probably this 20s, 30s period. This is a very standard watch fabrication type and the technology. One is very interested to see on the other side of the dial, if one disassembles this, that are there any other additional clues inside the watch, under the dial, for example, or on the movement, on the reverse side of the movement. But this is probably a project for later. But however, we do have this curious object which is bearing the hallmark of an individual who was only known for his dial fabrication and as a very high expert and pioneer in this field. So we are also left to wonder that if this watch was produced after 1930, was this something that the widow, who continued until 1936 under this company, was she generating funds by fabricating watches with a collection of allied family members or other partners for watch fabrication and living off of the profits? This also remains a possibility. But this was eventually, this company of Ariste Montandon-Calame was eventually liquidated in 1936 after the death of Ariste. So it is interesting that the company was functioning until this later period. This is an interesting, very curious, mysterious item. This may be very rare indeed. I have never seen any watches with this maker's mark previously. So one must assume that we are dealing with a highly rare object, if not rather unique. I'm not going too far as to say it's totally unique, but this is definitely a curious object. The fact that it exists alone almost defies logic, because we are dealing with a company that was known for watch fabrication. But this may be an indication that they had a series of products which were able to be realized, including watches, for additional revenue, that there certainly must have been a market for this type of local, and this probably would have been local. However, this is not exactly clear. Indeed, this is a silver piece with 800, the content. Now, there are the solar, this sign, le signe lunaire, for the German silver quality standard. So this could have been destined for German markets indeed. This is not exactly clear. But anyways, I did want to share this rather fascinating watch object, its discovery and story, talk about the key players behind these fabricators, and to shed a little light on this later stage of this watch dynasty and the people that were flourishing in the business. And indeed that we have such a very cool and indeed mysterious object, a watch made by a dial fabricator, Ariste Montandon-Calame. So thank you for your attention as always. I look forward to any feedback, any comments, and if you have any additional information with regards to such makers or your own stories to regale, please get in touch. I would love to hear your feedback, and I wish you a very nice weekend. Thank you for your attention, and adieu.